Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to welcome you to this, the 8th Annual General Meeting of Coast Capital Savings. I'll call the meeting to order. My name is Bill Wellburn. I am the Board Chair, and pursuant to the credit union rules, I am the one to chair this meeting. This is your meeting, and I'm pleased you could join us today. We look forward to your participation, and we look forward to talking to you about Coast Capital Savings, both in terms of our activities and our achievements this year. Once again, we have members and guests joining us over the internet via a live webcast. We welcome those viewers. Webcast participants can submit any questions via email during the meeting, and we'll include them during the members' open forum later in the meeting after the formal business session is concluded. Our rules require that all members be notified of a general meeting. A notice of the 2008 annual general meeting was provided in the October 2007 annual call for nominations, which was mailed to all members. Further details were provided in the Board of Directors election material that was mailed to members in March of this year. Our rules require that 50 members be present to constitute a quorum. Based on the preliminary registration information, I announce that we're in compliance with that minimum quorum requirement. We'll hold registration open until 5:15 or so. I understand that traffic is heavy, and that will provide for any late arrivals to get registered. Once registration closes, I'll ask the registrar to provide me with the actual number of registered guests, and I'll advise the meeting of that number. Ladies and gentlemen, the 8th Annual General Meeting of Coast Capital Savings is duly constituted for the transaction of business. Now, does everyone have the agenda and rules of order? That is the pink package. It was given to people on the way in. If you refer to the agenda, I'll just review it briefly. After we deal with the required appointments for this meeting and introductions, I'll present the Board of Directors report. This will be followed by a report from our Chief Executive Officer. Under item number 10, you'll hear from Carlo DeMello of KPMG LLP Chartered Accountants regarding their independent audit of the credit union's financial statements that they have conducted on your behalf. The meeting will then receive the 2007 audited financials, followed by a resolution to appoint external auditors for 2008. Under agenda item number 13, Bob Garnett, the chair of our nominations committee, will report the results of the 2008 director elections. The business meeting is scheduled to conclude at approximately 6 p.m. and will be followed immediately by the members' open forum. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you. Seconder, please. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Could you please indicate by raising your cards? Thank you. Opposed, if any? A motion is carried. The rules of order and debate and voting procedures are included with the agenda. I'll review some of the key points. On page 2, item number 17, members must be recognized by the chair before speaking and must clearly state their name and branch affiliation. Number 18, only one member shall have the floor at any one time. If two members wish to speak at the same time, the chair will determine the speaking order. Number 19, discussions on motions or resolutions is limited to 3 minutes per member, except the mover may speak a second time to close debate. The reason for the time limitation is to permit all those who wish to speak an opportunity to do so. And number 21, debate shall be relevant to the particular motion that is being discussed. And on page 1, under voting number 5, each member here tonight who is age 19 or over is entitled to 1 vote. And number 6, voting will be done by a show of hands using the pink registration packages. Are there any questions on the rules of order and debate and voting procedures? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the rules? Seconder, please. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I'll move to item number 5, appointments and introductions. I appoint Jonathan Jesk of the law firm Borden, Ladner, Gervais, LLP, parliamentarian for the meeting. And I appoint Linda Taylor, our secretary for the board, as the recording secretary for the meeting. And I also appoint Jerry Delamattia as our returning officer for the meeting. I'd now like to introduce the head table, our directors, and our guests. We have directors with us this evening. We have Bob Garnett. Bob, if you could just stand and stay standing until I conclude the directors' introductions. Christine Brody is here. Bill Cook. Frank Harper. Glenn Wong. And Elizabeth Woods. And I believe our other directors are either in transit or unable to attend. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's your board of directors. And at the head table, I have on my left our President and CEO, Lloyd Craig. That's Lloyd. And to my right, Jonathan Jesk, our parliamentarian, and Linda Taylor, our recording secretary. Now, we have some guests with us this evening. Susan Wong with Credit Union Central of BC. Susan? Bruce Howell, President and CEO of Prospera Credit Union. And Brady Jepson from Cumis. Good, thank you for coming out this evening and joining our meeting. The minutes of our last AGM, held April the 25th, 2007, are included in your information package. The board reviewed and approved the minutes of last year's AGM on June the 9th, 2007, and these minutes are now being presented to you for your information. Is there any business arising out of the minutes? Okay, we'll move on to the report from the Board of Directors. If you have any questions on the board report or the reports that follow, I'd ask that you just make a note of them. We have a lot of interesting information for you this evening, and questions that come to mind may be answered as we proceed through the reports. Before we move to new business towards the end of the meeting, I'll ask for any questions you may have on any of the reports that have been provided. So, ladies and gentlemen, 2007 was another very exciting year for Coast Capital Savings. Our financial results are amongst the best of any credit union in the country, and our CEO will provide you with the highlights shortly. One of the differences that I talk about quite often at Coast is the fact that we are a financial cooperative, and being a cooperative is right at the core of Coast Capital in terms of our values. And one of the things that we look to are our stakeholders. And I consider this business of being a cooperative just provides us with the ability of what I consider like wholesome accountability. And when you look at our various stakeholders and how we're providing to them, this past year in 2007, 89%, 88%. Next year it'll be 89. Last year it was 87. 2007, 88% of our customers rank us highly with satisfaction. That's important because we are here to provide services to our members. Our employees, a very significant stakeholder group. There's some 1,800 people that work for Coast Capital Savings, and they rate us collectively as a great place to work. I'm pleased to see in our financials that in 2007 we spent something like $114 million in employee salaries and benefits, and that makes Coast Capital Savings probably one of the larger private sector employers in the province of BC. On the community side, we touch a lot of organizations. In 2007, we invested over $5 million in the community. If you go back to 2003, that number was $2.2 million. That's a significant increase, and in 2008, we're budgeting some $5.6 million to be invested in the community. Our CEO will remind me that perhaps the most important stakeholder is the credit union itself, because that's what makes it all possible. And our retained earnings now have grown to some $383 million, making us one of the stronger credit unions in the country. and our regulatory capital is $480 million. The difference between those two numbers include members' investment and equity shares and our share of the system capital, along with some other adjustments. I'd now like to talk about some of the board's activities since our last AGM. This quote that you see before you is sort of the underlying theme for today's comments. I don't think we can ever forget that the importance of a strong board of directors and what that brings to the credit union in terms of representing the interests of the members and the perspectives of all our stakeholders. And also the importance that each director has in always acting in the best interests of the credit union. A director's job, it's quite similar to any other job. You have to know and you have to understand the expectations of the position, and with the position comes a very high level of commitment and competence and motivation. And like any job, to attract the most suitable candidates, qualified individuals that strengthen the board and fill the identified gaps, we have to position ourselves that directors, qualified directors, want to come and serve on the board. Bob Garnett, the chair of our nominations committee, he'll be talking about this more in his presentation later in the meeting. This year, though, we at Coast, the board, we implemented two of the initiatives that were enabled last year through the AGM. One is the Code of Performance Standards for Directors, and the other is the Director Remuneration Philosophy. Last year, members provided the board with the authority to establish a code of performance standards for directors, and this code's been developed by the Governance Committee and approved by the board. It sets out a number of expectations. This information you'll find on our website, and there's 9 of these things. I'll just touch on them briefly. The director criteria, it sets out the experience requirements, and this is lifted right out of the rules, and it sets out the required attributes, and the attributes are things like honesty and integrity, sound business judgment, financial literacy, knowledge of corporate governance, and leadership and team building skills. It speaks to director participation, and directors are expected to constructively engage with management and the board in approving the strategy of Coast Capital Savings and in the stewardship and oversight of the credit union. It speaks to corporate and regulatory policies and procedures, directors being required to be familiar with the policies, business, and the affairs of Coast Capital Savings, and familiar with the laws, regulations, and the rules to which Coast Capital Savings is subject. There's a section on board and committee activity. Directors are required to obviously prepare for board and committee meetings, to participate fully in meetings, and an attendance rate of 80% is expected. It talks about directors being both members and customers. Coast believes that directors can better represent and understand the interests of members and customers if directors are customers. As customers, directors are expected to maintain a banking relationship with Coast Capital Savings, and as members, directors are expected to participate in any equity share offerings by Coast Capital. Director conduct is referenced. There's 4 principal policies: a code of conduct and ethics for directors, a conflict of interest policy, a related party loan policy, and this code. All of those documents you can find on our website. We have a policy on director ongoing development as well, and directors are not requested but are required to participate in ongoing development. They're also expected to participate in annual evaluation reviews of the board's committees, and of their own performance. It talks about a change of circumstance, and the Conduct Review Committee will review any changes and consider the appropriateness of a director's continued membership on the board or a committee if there are significant changes. And it talks about resignation events, and these are events that materially affect a director's ability to continue to act as a director. And this would be situations where a director is in conflict with the code of conduct and ethics, or is unable to attend at least 75% of regularly scheduled meetings. If a director is in a legal dispute that could impact his or her ability to serve as a director, or if a director takes on new responsibilities in business or politics which may conflict with the goals of Coast Capital. So I encourage you to have a look at that on our website, because I think it does a fairly good job of speaking to what our expectations are for our directors. I'd now like to update the meeting on the implementation of the remuneration philosophy that was introduced last year and approved by the members. You know, the competition for qualified directors really is intense. And in terms of an ideal director at Coast Capital, these are the sorts of things that you would see in the ideal candidate profile: the commitment to the vision that Coast has, understanding the complexities of a large local financial institution, the common sense, independent-minded and team player attitude towards things, being a lifelong learner, understanding the role of the board and a director, and having particular business experience and specific skills that add to and strengthen the board. We learned a couple of years ago that if we want to attract and retain highly qualified directors, we had to align our director remuneration with the marketplace. So last year we brought forward a remuneration philosophy. It established a member-approved process that's based on sound principles, and it also introduced the notion that we all subscribe to of transparency. Now, I'll just review that remuneration philosophy that was approved last year. Coast Capital Savings is a cooperative financial institution with national aspirations. We believe that better boards produce better results, and that better boards are made up of dedicated and highly competent directors. To attract and retain directors with the business experience and skills required to achieve Coast Capital's strategic plan, we must offer a level of remuneration that both reflects our cooperative heritage and satisfies the market reality. Consequently, the director remuneration at Coast should be lower than that of public companies of similar size and or complexity, yet higher than that traditionally paid to cooperatives. The highest quartile for cooperatives, but no higher than the lowest quartile for comparable public companies. At 3-year intervals, the Governance Committee shall retain an independent remuneration consultant for the purpose of providing a recommendation to the Committee on Director Remuneration. The consultant's recommendation shall be based on a Canada-wide market survey in accordance with the Board Remuneration Philosophy. The Board's Governance Committee retained Western Compensation and Benefits consultants who did the detailed research in accordance with the member-approved remuneration philosophy. I should mention that this organization is independent. They are experts in the field, and they had access to data at over 100 publicly and traded and cooperative companies that fell within the criteria that was set out in the philosophy. Their recommendation was reviewed by the Governance Committee and approved by the Board as follows. When I was looking at this slide earlier, I should have put on the old remuneration for reference. This slide indicates the annual board chair retainer is $40,000. The old annual board retainer was $33,220. The annual director retainer that was approved stands at $15,000. The old retainer was $16,610. Where it's different, we now have committee chair retainers of $5,000 for the committees that are less work, not to say any committee is less work, but relatively speaking. And we have a committee chair retainer of $10,000 for the committees that are particularly busy. And in addition, there is a board and committee meeting fee of $750. Now, a meeting fee is a bit of a misnomer. That includes preparation, research, travel, attendance, and follow-up for each meeting attended. So the question comes to mind, how does this align with the philosophy? Well, the philosophy says lower than that of public companies of similar size and or complexity, yet higher than that traditionally paid to cooperatives. The highest quartile for cooperatives, but no higher than the lowest quartile for comparable public companies. Well, I thought that I would go and have a look at what I thought would be comparable companies. I didn't have access to the details of the 100 companies that were used in the survey, but I can certainly, like anybody else in the room, go online and have a look at what information is out there. And surprisingly, I found it much easier to get information on the publicly traded companies, because they're required to do it, than I did on the cooperatives. But this is what I came up with, and I hope you can see that. Here on the right-hand side, you'll see the numbers that I just provided to you for Coast Capital, and I'm just focusing on the board chair retainer, the director retainer, and the meeting fee amount. And starting on the left-hand side, we have Canadian Western Bank, which is interestingly quite a similar-sized organization to Coast. I noted the size of the organizations towards the bottom. You can see they're $9.5 billion in assets versus Coast's $9.9 billion. And you can see that our revenues are comparable. You'll notice that their net income is quite a bit higher than ours, and that speaks to the fact that we probably have twice the number of branches and provide a lot more service to our members than they do to their customers. It's also interesting to note, and I forgot to put this on the table, but for these 4 different organizations, Canadian Western Bank has 12 directors, Credit Union Central of BC has 11 directors, Cooperators Group has 22 directors, and Coast Capital Savings currently has 11 directors, and at the conclusion of this meeting we'll have 10 directors. Now, looking at the other comparables, you can see Credit Union Central of BC, an organization that is smaller in asset size than Coast. Credit Union Central of BC, of course, is the central banker for credit unions in the province of BC. Its annual revenues are proportionally about in line with assets, but about half of what Coast is, and net income is $24 million versus our $58 million. And you can see what the amounts paid to directors there are. The board chair $30,000, director retainer $10,000, meeting fee of $500. Cooperators Group, the board chair retainer is, I could say, a relatively generous $100,000. The director retainer is $18,000, and the meeting fee $500. So that gives you a sense of how Coast Capital stands amongst a very limited sample, but with organizations that are somewhat similar, perhaps more similar than most in the comparable company list. So what's the value proposition for Coast paying that kind of money? Well, as I mentioned, it allows us to go and attract qualified directors to stand for election to the board, and it allows us to retain qualified directors. And as I mentioned, the Nominations Committee will report shortly on this year's director recruitment process. In summary, if you look at the value of a strong board at Coast, the 3 things that really jump out is the board's ability to enhance the executive decision-making. We have a very, very, very bright CEO, and he has an extremely strong team. But when we're together as board and senior management, the chemistry is right, and the decisions, I like to think, are sometimes made better as a result of your board. We also you should look to your board, and I believe we do, improve organizational performance. And at the end of the day, we want to create a viable and sustainable organization for all of our stakeholders. Now, the website, you'll find when you look at it, and if you compare it to other cooperatives, is probably the most comprehensive in the whole cooperative sector. You'll find a full list of all of Coast directors, what their committee assignments are. You'll see what their attendance records are, and you'll see how much remuneration was paid to each director. And if you're unable to access the website for whatever reason, just contact the contact center, and they'll get that information out to you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my report. I'm now going to ask Lloyd Craig, our President and CEO, to provide his report on operations. And after he has done that, I'll come back and we'll get on with the next session. Thank you. Lloyd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased this evening to be able to share with you the financial performance and corporate achievements of Coast Capital Savings from 2007. Last year was a truly remarkable one, where many of the initiatives we have been working on for the past 5 years came together to deliver very encouraging financial results. The last 5 years have been good for Coast Capital Savings. We have launched one of our most successful products, the free checking, free debit, and more account. We've taken the Coast Capital experience to the next level with our Apereo-style branches. We've extended branch hours to accommodate our members. We have repositioned investment services. We've rebranded ourselves, and we've introduced new small business accounts. These items are just some pieces of the puzzle working together to make us relevant and stronger for the consumer. Details about our most successful year are included in our 2007 annual report, available for you to pick up this evening. The theme of the report, There's More, is one that I believe embodies our attitude concerning the future of Coast Capital Savings. 4 years ago, we launched our new brand and tagline, How Can We Help You? We made helping our customers, our communities, and each other one of our core values. Our company accelerated its growth, raised its profile with the public, and brought in new members with our innovative products and services. We've made it our mission to deliver simple financial help by offering products and services that set us apart and meet your financial needs. But we do live in a global economy. Consumers today have the world at their fingertips, and because of this, the bar continues to rise every year. Fortunately, that has never swayed us. Yes, it's a competitive market, but we're committed to excel, to pull ahead, and be a leader in the Canadian financial services industry. Believe it or not, money is not always our bottom line. Corporate citizenship is a cornerstone of our credit union and a key part of who we are as a business. Coast Capital Savings aspires to be a leading company committed to helping communities achieve economic success and improve their quality of life. In 2007, Coast Capital Savings contributed more than $5 million to the communities we serve, and our corporate citizenship continued to be recognized through several external awards and high levels of employee and customer satisfaction. So how are we going to use the successes of the past year to position us for the future? By offering you, the members, more. As our annual report suggests, there's more to Coast Capital Savings than meets the eye. More value, more ideas, more solutions, more innovation, and more possibilities. Our commitment to innovation has returned desirable results over the past few years, and 2007 was no exception. In fact, I'm pleased to report that our 2007 performance was the best to date. Net income for the year ended December 31st, 2007 was $58.6 million, up 10.4%. Return on average assets was 0.65%, consistent with earnings in 2006 and 2005. This figure shows that we continue to manage our assets and the business effectively. Coast Capital Savings assets increased to $9.9 billion, up from $8.9 billion the year before. Mutual funds under administration increased to $1.8 billion, an increase of 6%, slower growth than the previous 2 years. Total assets under administration, adding our assets on and off the balance sheet, increased to $11.9 billion compared to $10.9 billion in 2006, an increase of 9.3%. Our commercial loan portfolio grew by 16% compared to 26% in 2006. With small business representing the majority of businesses in British Columbia, we launched 2 new accounts as part of our Big Perks for Small Business program. The one small fee, the rest is free business account, and the deposit for free business account helped increase new business account growth by 87%. Our goal is to continue to develop these small business relationships and build our credit and deposit business with them. Return on equity remains strong at 14.9%. Regulatory capital increased from 10.26 to 10.41% as our retained earnings grew at a faster pace than our risk-weighted assets. Net interest income was $212 million compared to $197 million in 2006, up $15 million. I'm pleased to note that our overall operating efficiency improved from 73.5 to 72.2% as revenue growth of 5.8% exceeded cost increases of 3.7%. Our pursuit of operating efficiency will continue to be relentless, a response to the highly competitive nature of our industry. I would like to speak for a moment about the non-retail banking side of our organization. Our Coast Capital Savings commercial real estate team offers developers an array of full-service construction and term solutions. In 2007, our commercial real estate portfolio totaled $2.3 billion. Growth in construction and project financing increased by 24%, while growth in longer-term mortgage financing was 20%. Last year, more than 4,000 new businesses sought the advice and expertise of our small business specialists. As a result, business deposit accounts grew by 14%, and the number of total business accounts grew by 18%. In 2007, Coast Capital Insurance Services demonstrated its passion for innovation to become more attractive to its present and future clients. 4,890 additional automobile insurance transactions were completed in 2007, bringing our total numbers to 177,000. This is nearly 3 times the provincial growth rate for this product. Coast Capital Insurance implemented effective process improvements last year, such as web-based sales of short-term travel insurance products and redirected business activities like internal claims service and settlement. This move improved the operational efficiency of the agency by 4.7% while simultaneously growing their revenue by 7%. Revenue growth from mutual and segregated funds was 15%, up from 13% the year before. Equity markets were bullish for the first 3 quarters of 2007, and this was reflected in higher sales. Life insurance produced revenue growth of 27%. Equipment leasing expansion outside of British Columbia continued, with balances more than doubling. We provide lease and loan financing on various types of commercial equipment. In 2007, our equipment finance portfolio totaled $172 million. It has been said that most people are more comfortable with old problems than with new solutions. Clearly, those people don't work at Coast Capital Savings. It's obvious that we value innovation, and we pride ourselves on our ability to deliver unbeatable solutions to our members. Last December, we launched a program called the Tell Us What You Think Tank. 2,500 Coast Capital members signed up to participate in monthly online surveys. It's an opportunity for us to understand the lifestyles and needs of our members and generate solutions accordingly. After the first round of surveys, which asks the panelists to evaluate our level of service, they appear to hold us in high regard and consider us, quote, one of the best companies for good service, quote. In keeping with our desire to improve to provide the safest service to our members, an additional layer of security called two-factor authentication for signing into Coast online banking has just become available for credit unions. This product provides additional layers of security for members who use online banking, including a picture selection, a member-defined phrase, and a series of predetermined security questions. Coast Capital is first in line for the implementation of this product this summer, one that we trust will exhibit our continued commitment to the safeguarding of your financial and personal information. We have also recently introduced Coast Mobile Banking. Now, members use simple text messaging commands to check their account balances and view recent transactions on their accounts. This is just one of the easy and safe services we provide to make the lives of our busy members more manageable. Likewise, as communities in BC grow and change, so do we. In an effort to increase our physical presence in Metro Vancouver, we continue to expand our branch network. Our 50th branch has just opened in the Queensborough area of New Westminster. We will also be opening another branch in Vancouver on West Broadway later this summer. We've already relocated our Langley branch to a more accessible location near Willowbrook Mall, and we have committed to move our South Surrey branch in Peninsula Village just east to Grandview Corners during 2008. Coast Capital Savings is involved in ongoing discussions with the federal and provincial governments. We are working toward legislation designed to allow those credit unions who desire to operate outside their traditional provincial boundaries the right to do so. We continue to strongly support this progressive legislation to help us move beyond our traditional borders, which will open up further opportunities for growth. We also support the initiative to amalgamate Canada's 8 provincial credit union centrals to consolidate resources and lower costs. Last year, the BC and Ontario centrals announced a merger. The combined organization, to be named Central One, will provide payments, treasury, internet banking, and trade services to more than 200 credit unions in BC and Ontario. The merger is expected to close later this year. These progressive initiatives will create a more competitive Canadian marketplace and help keep the credit union system highly relevant. 2008 will be a challenging year as the disruptions in the credit markets continue and the Bank of Canada lowers short-term interest rates to compensate. But in many ways, 2008 will be a year of milestones. We've just opened our 50th branch and also expect to hit $10 billion in assets, 400,000 members, and 200,000 free checking accounts. On behalf of all the executives, I would like to thank our board for leading the way as we move into the future and new areas of opportunity. And none of our success could ever be accomplished without our dedicated and hardworking employees. As we constantly work to develop the next generation of Coast Capital Savings leadership, I'm confident that we will continue to perform strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. I received notification that as of 5:15, when we cut off the registration, we had 84 members registered in attendance. Looking at this room, I know there's a lot more than that here, and it's unfortunate that traffic delayed people in getting here, but we were committed to start at 5 o'clock. The next item of business on our agenda at number 10 is the presentation of the auditor's report. I'd like to introduce Carlo DeMello. He is a partner at the Vancouver office of KPMG LLP, and he is going to provide the auditor's report. Carlo, come on up. I know you're not going to read it, because everybody in this room can read.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. On instruction, I won't read our auditor's report to you. I will tell you that we have audited the financial statements, the consolidated financial statements of Coast Capital Savings Credit Union as at December 31st and for the year then ended. We conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. In our opinion, based on our audit, we find that the financial statements in all material respect present the financial position and the operations and cash flows in accordance with Canadian generally accepted accounting principles. That concludes our report. Thank you.
If there's any questions for Carlo on the auditor's report, I'll get him back up here. Good. We'll move on to the financial statements. Lloyd has given you the highlights of this past year. If you look in the annual report, you'll find the management discussion and analysis. It's called the MD&A. That's the plain English version of translating our financial statements into something that we can all understand. As required by legislation, the board has approved the financial statements on your behalf, but at this time, if there are any questions on the financials, we can deal with them. Seeing none, then, we'll move to the appointment of an auditor for this 2008 year. It's the board's recommendation that the firm KPMG LLP be reappointed auditors for 2008 and that their remuneration be set by the board of directors. May I have a motion to appoint KPMG? Thank you. Seconder, please. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Congratulations, Carlo. Next is the report of the Nominations Committee. I'm going to ask Bob Garnett to come forward, and I will introduce Bob to the meeting. This is Bob.
Thanks, Bill. Well, I'm pleased to be here with you on behalf of the Nominations Committee this evening to report on the results of the 2008 Directors' election. I chaired the committee, which also included your board chair, Bill Wellburn, and Frank Harper. A highly engaged board of directors with the right balance of skills and experience is the cornerstone of effective governance. Collectively, directors must have the required skills and experience to effectively carry out the board's oversight responsibilities on behalf of the membership and to work with management to provide input around and approve the Coast Capital Savings strategy. In order to achieve these expectations, a nominations committee is appointed annually. The committee reports directly to members, and it's made up of directors who are not currently eligible for re-election. Using the annual nominations process as an opportunity to strengthen the board, they evaluate the board's current members and identify the skills, business experience, and qualifications that are needed to assist Coast Capital Savings in achieving its long-term strategic goals. This evaluation is completed in conjunction with an independent governance consultant to ensure that a fair process for the nominees and members and the needs of the credit union. As part of the process, a director recruitment profile is developed, which sets out the attributes needed to further strengthen the board going forward. This information is shared with Coast Capital Savings members in the member newsletter when the annual call for nominations for qualified candidates is made. In addition, the Nominations Committee and the Governance Consultant actively recruit qualified candidates who meet the specific skills and business experience identified by the committee. They carefully review the nominations received in detail, and after an extensive review process involving interviews, analysis of past work experience, community contributions, and detailed reference checks, they recommend individuals who can offer significant skills and expertise that are currently required by Coast Capital Savings Board. This year, the committee's analysis determined that marketing and branding, financial comprehension, and strategy are the skills required to further strengthen the Board of Directors. From year to year, we expect the skills required to enhance the Board of Directors will vary in response to the changing needs of the credit union and the skills that the Board currently has. Last November, nominations were accepted from candidates interested in standing for the 2008 Board of Directors election. A total of 4 candidates let their names stand, 3 who were recommended by the committee and 1 other candidate. The Nominations Committee goal was to recommend 3 candidates who they believe can provide significant expertise and are most qualified to fill the 3 upcoming positions on Coast Capital Savings Board. While many candidates offer excellent skills, if those skills do not align with the current needs of the board, the candidate will not be recommended by the committee. However, we do maintain a database of all interested potential candidates as a source for future years' vacancies. Furthermore, to ensure all candidates are treated fairly, the committee enlisted the consultant, who is considered one of the most qualified governance consultants in Canada, to interview the incumbent candidates who were considering running for re-election to the board. The committee carefully reviewed and accepted the consultant's recommendation regarding the status of each of those candidates and the degree to which each met the director recruitment profile. At the end of the process, the committee and the consultant recommended the 3 candidates who they considered to be the most qualified to fill the available positions. We recognize that it's impossible for every voting member to undertake the same rigorous review on their own. The Nominations Committee work is meant to assist members in making an informed voting decision. The candidate information in the brochure follows exactly the same format for all recommended and other candidates, so that members have the same candidate-supplied information to make their own decision. The Nominations Committee goal was to ensure the information was communicated as clearly as possible. The practice of the credit union system of identifying the skill gaps on the board, profiling the needed attributes and expertise of directors, and recommending candidates standing for election is growing. This practice is recognized by the Canadian Co-operative Association as the best practice in good corporate governance. How you vote is your decision. The information the committee provides is meant to assist you in making a more informed decision. All members of the credit union received information about candidate recruitment by mail in October. Interested members were provided with information packages and an opportunity to attend a mandatory information session. Directors' elections were conducted from March 28th to April 16th, 2008. In accordance with the credit union rules, each year the nominating committee appoints an individual independent of the credit union to serve as the returning officer to oversee the election process. Jerry Delamatia, who has extensive experience as a senior electoral officer in federal and provincial elections, served as our returning officer again this year. I'm pleased to report that in this year's election, 17,403 ballots were cast. That's a 105% increase over last year's director election, which received 8,487 ballots. I'd like to thank members for participating in this important process. The 17,403 ballots cast included 2,170 spoiled and 978 rejected ballots, resulting in 14,255 valid ballots for the election. A spoiled ballot is defined as any ballot on which the member voted too few or too many candidates. A ballot was rejected if it was not possible to complete the required verification criteria. The individual results for each candidate are as follows. Mary Jordan, 12,582. Gail Stevens, $13,341. Doug Stone, $12,272. And Elizabeth Woods, $4,570. The committee declares that Mary Jordan, Gail Stevens, and Doug Stone are elected to the Board of Directors for 3-year terms. Thank you to all candidates who let their names stand in this year's election. In closing, I would like to thank the members of the committee, Bill Wellburn and Frank Harper, for their thoughtful contributions, patience, determination, and vision for the credit union to make critical decisions in support of good governance for Canada's second largest credit union. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Doug Stone and Karen Kestelou. They were the chairs of the nominating committee for the past 3 years and were largely responsible for the detailed process and procedures that we have put in place to go out and find and assess the candidates coming forward to the board. We look forward to answering any questions or hearing comments you might have in the members' open forum later in the agenda. Thank you very much. Bill?
Thank you, Bob. I'm wondering if I might introduce our 3 new directors. Well, one not so new, one won't call him old, but Doug Stone. Mary Jordan and Gail Stevens. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we move to new business, are there any questions relating to the reports of the Board of Directors, the President and CEO, or the Nominations Committee? Good. We'll move to new business. Now, to ensure members receive adequate notice of matters to be considered at this meeting, Coast's rules state that in order for an ordinary resolution to be eligible for consideration, it must be submitted to the Board of Directors for review and consideration at least 90 days prior to the AGM. No resolutions were received from members by the published deadline of January the 16th, 2008. So we have no resolutions to consider, but if there's any new business, it could come forward now. Okay, we'll move on to item number 15, which is the closing remarks and conclusion of the business meeting, which will be followed by the members' open forum. I'd like to offer some thank yous to the meeting organizers. Putting a meeting on like this, it looks easy, but it's very complicated with all this audio-visual stuff and the web broadcast, and I think they've done a terrific job. So thank you very much, all Coast staff and hotel staff that have made this possible. And I would like to thank my board colleagues for all their hard work this past year. It's a great bunch of people, and I really do think that a lot of organizations look at Coast for the innovations that we have brought forward on the governance side. I'd like to acknowledge our 3 retiring directors. 2 of them are with us tonight. One was unable to attend because of her mother's unwell. Chris Brody's been on the board for a long time, since 1993. She has served the system very well. She's a past director of Credit Union Central of BC. She's a director of Cooperatives Group, and she serves on the Credit Union Foundation of BC, and she also serves on a host of other community things, including Kwantlen University. I got that right? Yeah. So, Christine, thank you very much. Mary Jane Stenberg, as I say, unable to attend tonight, unfortunately. She was our first post-merger director. Most of us came with the baggage of the heritage credit unions, but Mary Jane came as the fresh face amongst us and brought a very fresh perspective, which we sincerely enjoyed having at the board. Elizabeth Woods, she was a director, again, at one of our old heritage credit unions from 1994 through the merger into 2003. Came back on the board in 2005 and is going off the board tonight, 2008. All 3 of these directors brought a lot of knowledge and brought a level of participation which was just so sincere and so good. And you're going to be missed. So thank you all. Thank you, Elizabeth. And as I go down my list of thank yous, I'd like to thank Lloyd, our CEO, and his executive team, along with all those employees who provide the services and are in the back offices making Coast Capital Savings work. That is why we are such a great organization. And lastly, I would like to thank our members because, as I said earlier, without you, nothing works. So thank you very much for your continued support of Coast Capital Savings. That brings us to the conclusion of the annual general meeting. And as I say, immediately following, without hesitation, we're going to move to the open forum. But just to wrap things up, could I have a motion to conclude the AGM? Thank you. A seconder, please. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The members' open forum, just before we get into that, a couple of announcements. We, directors and executive, will be here afterwards to speak to members one-on-one. We're color-coded, red, yellow, director, management. That's the way it works. We appreciate your feedback, too, and I understand there's feedback forms, so if you would take a moment just to fill them in. What happens, that goes to staff. Staff, they collate everything, and they bring it forward to the governance committee, so if there's ideas on how we can make this meeting more meaningful, they will come forward next year. And I would also ask that there'll be a drop box on the way out to recycle your information packages so you don't have to take them home with you. But if you want to take them home with you, please feel free. We'll now go to the open forum and discussion, and we'll use the same rules of order as we had for the business meeting. That's a reference to the 3-minute rule, so everybody has a chance. Angela from Coast is our contact with the Internet, and if any members have emailed a question or comment in, Angela will come forward to a mic and bring that comment or question forward. But, ladies and gentlemen, I now offer up microphone 1 or microphone number 2 if anybody wishes to come forward, ask a question, or make a comment. We have a very familiar and friendly face coming forward.
I didn't know when to, Chris Brody, member of Coast Capital. Do I need to give my serial number? I'm okay?
No, we don't give numbers.
Right. No serial number. All right. I just didn't know when to respond to the thank you from you, Bill, and thank you very much. As an outgoing director, I just wanted to make 3 comments of thank you. First of all, to thank you to all the board members that I served with since 1993 on Richmond Savings and with the 2 mergers. So I wanted to thank them very much for all of the support and work we did together. I wanted to congratulate the 2 new directors as well as Doug returning. It's a great board. You'll look very forward. I know you'll look forward to working together to support and do those policy decisions and work with management. I also wanted to make sure that I thank the staff and the members, well, the members who sometimes are the staff as well, for their support throughout those 15 years of me being on the board. I found working with the board of directors and with management from all of those years has been extremely valuable, and I've learned a lot, and I think that our Coast Capital Savings will go very far, and I'm looking forward to watching, even though I'll be on the outside looking in. But I just want to congratulate Lloyd and all of the team, as well as the employees, for making Coast Capital what it is today and for the future. So thank you very much, and continue to be a leader in the credit union and the financial industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. We still have time. Angela, has anything come from the Internet? We're looking for some content here, so.
Sorry, there are no webcast questions at this time.
No, okay, well, this is last call then, ladies and gentlemen. Sir.
My name is Phil Embley. I'm a member of the White Rock branch. And you were talking a little bit earlier on about directors' compensation, and that's very good. I think that's great to see that all disclosed. And I was wondering if there's any thought about disclosing executive compensation. I know that the There is more disclosure required now in the public markets, and I was wondering if there's been any thought to that, and if there's anybody that has any comments, and I'd be interested in hearing it.
Good, thank you. Yeah, there's been discussion around that issue, and it's an interesting one, you know, where there's no requirement for disclosure of executive compensation. And I suppose there's a couple of things that come to mind. First of all, members elect a board. Members approve a mechanism for directors to be paid, and we report back to you exactly what the details of those arrangements are. We then, as a board, it's our responsibility to hire a chief executive officer. And when we do that, not only when we hire him, but when we look at salary, we don't pull a number out of the air. We're very careful in our approach to that, where our Human Resources Committee engages, not management, but the committee engages an outside resource. And that outside resource is used by the committee, reports to the committee on all levels of executive compensation for our CEO and for his direct reports. And that committee then makes the approvals for those levels of compensation. So if you look at it that way, you have members electing a board, approving their compensation, and then it's the board's responsibility to then determine what executive compensation ought to be and to oversee it. We do that. And I guess the other thing is, too, when we have hired our executives, it's always been on the basis that the compensation arrangements are private between the board and the executive. If we change along the way, that is a material change to their terms of employment, where we're now disclosing how much they're being paid. So that's an issue to be dealt with. My personal view is longer term, we will probably get to that point where executive compensation is disclosed. But I'm just trying to give the meeting some comfort in the fact that our approach to executive compensation is very structured, it's very arm's length, and we use the right resources to come up with the numbers that we use to make our approvals. So I hope that goes a way to answering your question, Phil. Any other questions or comments? Well, if none, then I'll conclude the members' open forum. To all the people here today, we have some treats over on the side, and for people home watching on the internet, the fridge is in the kitchen. So thank you very much for coming out today, ladies and gentlemen, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.